Hello, my name is Dean Brewer. Today we are going to discuss information needed by business and marketing teachers to complete their program approval renewal applications. At least one lead business teacher from your school district should have received an email from me with several resource documents, including the A to Z instructions manual. You may wish to take notes in that document as you view this training video. We encourage you to watch with an administrator. That A to Z document will look like this when you open it up. For resources for preparing your program approval submission, and it's called the Program Approval Directions A to Z document. Our goals for today will be to review changes since your last program approval. For most of you, that was 5 years ago. Some tips for quick and successful program approval. We will review preparing course syllabi and other sorts of evidence documents. We will review updating the program approval spreadsheet form. There is a template that I have sent you to fill out instead of downloading a copy from the MDE website. We'll talk at the end about continuous improvement. Program approval is the beginning of a process, not the end of a process. And then a timeline for reducing summer and back to school stress for 2024. So as we mentioned in the part 1 video in this series, there are several reasons why we have a program approval process. Those include compliance with Minnesota rule. They include validation of course rigor and program alignment to state frameworks or to national standards. Validation of CTE program design components, required elements in Minnesota rule. And then alignment to Perkins 5 goals. Making sure that we are developing career pathways aligned with workforce needs and that we are developing opportunities for students to participate in work-based learning and achieve industry-recognized credentials. So all of those are goals that are reviewed and set up as a part of a successful program approval renewal. Now, some of you have participated in this process in the past. It is important to note that the program approval form, Table C, business frameworks, and syllabus evidence expectations have all changed over the last 5 years. Most of this year's process will involve development of new or updated materials. You will not be able to turn in 5-year-old documents. So any of the resources we are sharing with you and any of the resources we're asking you to turn in to us very likely require either creation of new or at least some editing of existing information. Information that's 5 years old will not be able to successfully complete the program approval process. In the business career field, there are several important changes that have taken place that will impact your renewals if you previously offered these courses. Those items include, if you are looking to see approval for a careers course, the focus has to be on business careers. If it is a general career exploration course, it cannot be approved. We are no longer approving the 03 independent study courses. Business law needs to focus on business law. If it is a course that is substantially about the courts and about criminal law, that course can't be approved. There are a variety of courses that include multimedia and video, and in the past, some of those were approved under business, but if they are preparing students for broadcast journalism, if you are putting out podcasts, news programs, those are preparation for broadcast journalism, and those cannot be approved under a business program. And then just a reminder that Perkins 5 drove a concept called Comprehensive Local Needs Assessment, Workforce Needs. And so we should be offering courses that meet future, prospective, and growing employment needs for students in your region or across the state. So we are looking at the offerings and the new offerings in your program that align to those workforce needs. Now, if your business program also includes offering a 1-4-90-90, a 0-4-90-90, what are called work-based learning programs, remember that the number 95 and the 96, what are labeled as seminar courses on Table C, are not just careers courses. They are preparation for students to participate in a work-based learning job placement. There are required content such as career development, coverage of child labor laws, safety training, employer-employee rights. Those are required components in those courses, and that is not just a general careers course if it's going to be approved as part of a work-based learning program. Now, that 97 course, where you are having the job placement, that has additional evidence beyond just providing the required course syllabi that you would be providing for your other courses. You see them bulleted on this screen. They include providing a training agreement that you are using with all students, a training plan template you're using with all students, an evaluation plan, and then any other documents you've created that help in the administration of your work-based learning program. Now, in a few locations around the state, districts attempt to identify their school store as a work-based learning experience. This poses some challenges related to program approval and to school finance. Teachers and district leaders should review the SBE guidance document developed by MDE and then contact me for discussion on whether this type of approval is possible. And so you notice I've put the link for that on the bottom here. I will send that out in email to all of the teachers who are up for renewal this time. And we have communicated that out previously as well, so you can also look at previous emails from me. That document is available on any of our program area coverage documents on our MDE website. So the SBE guidance for schools document will address some of those challenges and concerns about operating an SBE and the implications of them potentially being attempted to be offered as a work-based learning experience. One of the documents I emailed to lead business teachers was titled FY24 Update. This is the application form you should complete and send to MDE with your syllabi and other evidence documents. That document has a tab called Notes for Renewal with customized notes for your program. Read this tab first before beginning any work. A couple of key reminders. So you see on the screen there are the various documents that made up that email that you should have seen. And if you did not receive that, or none of your teachers in the program are sure that you've seen that, then let me know and I will resend that information out. But one of those documents, that FY24 update, is the place where you will start. That is the form you will use, and that tab, that Notes for Renewal, is the key place where you'll want to begin. And you see that keynote there at the top. It's mentioning that that's the place to start. There are 3 things that take the most time when you're completing program approval. One is license, because that's somewhat out of your control. It's completely out of ours at MDE, having to do with whether there are out-of-field permissions to seek, Tier 1, Tier 2 sorts of implications, or simply teacher renewals of their 4 or 5-year license areas. So that is something that you need to get started on early, because that can take some time. And then also the other 2 areas we're going to talk about in this presentation today: tab 2, preparing your program design evidence, and then tab 4, identifying the courses you wish to be part of this approved program, and the syllabi or the evidence revisions that demonstrate your alignment to frameworks, alignment for each of those courses that you would like to see approved. Now, when we talk about licensure, and we dealt with this in the Part 1 training video, review teacher licenses to make sure that all teachers have the appropriate licenses for their program. As you see, as an example, if a teacher has a 040800 marketing license, when you go to the license lookup site, if you've not been there before, you see the link on the bottom of the page, and you find that your license is that, you can teach in the marketing program, but cannot teach courses that are listed in the 140710 business program. Switch that around. If you've got the 140710 business license, you can teach any of the courses in that business program, but not in the 040800 program. If you've got, and what we see in red here, the legacy license, the 140000 license, that is not a CTE license, and that teacher is not eligible to teach in a CTE program at all. So for that teacher, you would need an out-of-field permission to enable them to be listed in the program and be as part of an approved program. The license that's been offered since 2001 is the 140050 license. Teachers that have that license can teach any of the courses in both of the programs, both the business program and the marketing program, and also supervise work-based learning when it is for business students only, when it is part of a business work-based learning, not the kind of diversified where you are placing students from other program areas as well. Tab 2 on the application form asks for information related to required program design elements. These include student leadership development, career development, and safety training. One of the handouts in the email I sent provides explanation and sample responses for these questions. I also have a model template if you don't want to include this information in a syllabus, but MDE is saying we need you to submit it to us. I do have a model template that I can send out to you upon request if you would like to see an alternative way to provide that information to MDE instead of putting it on your syllabus. So that handout, that program design handout, looks like this. And it provides some notes, some background information, and sample responses for each of the 4 questions on tab 2. So that's hopefully a helpful resource to help you complete that new tab. That was not a tab that was part of your application 5 years ago. Now we're going to take a quick look at each of the 4 question areas on that tab 2. Question 1 addresses required student leadership development. And so when MDE looks at student leadership, we're thinking largely about employability skills. What are non-career specific skills you are helping students develop? Those employability skills like critical thinking, communication, problem solving, that they are doing through activities, through learning, through instructional units aligned and embedded in your program. So when we're looking at this, is more than just having a DECA or a BPA chapter, and some kids are officers and some kids are competing in competitions. These are embedded skill development, leadership development activities that you've got embedded throughout your course so that all students have the opportunity to benefit and develop leadership skills. Many teachers confuse student leadership development with career development or the content and technical skills of the courses. They are different. Employability skills can and should be taught in any CTE course. These should be being taught by the FACS teacher in your school, the ag teacher in your school, the construction teacher in your school. So they are non-career specific. They are those leadership, those employability skills that are beneficial from any student coming out of a CTE program. Now, what you're looking for in the response for tab 1 is to demonstrate for us what kind of activity or activities you're using to develop these skills and what exactly you see those skills are. Here's one example that a teacher provided a year or 2 ago. They basically provided a short paragraph about a service project, and they identified about the service project, about the various community groups that students worked with, and they were developing through their work in this project decision-making skills, teamwork skills, communication skills. And so this civic project was the activity that helped to develop leadership skills, and they had work that they had to do on their own and work with individuals in the community, and there were 3 different areas of leadership skills that were developed. So that's one format for being able to provide that information on student leadership in that question 1. Now, another format for providing this information was provided by another teacher a year or 2 ago. And what they did was they took some of those center of the wheel employability skill areas, and they pulled out what a key skill development was in some of their various courses. For example, in web design, students programming doesn't always work the first time. They develop problem solving and debugging skills to resolve the errors in their code so that their pages work correctly. Marketing is not just to do one thing, the same thing for everyone. You are identifying target markets and then developing creative approaches to reach out to each of these different markets. So they identified that creativity and innovation goes into development of marketing plans, marketing materials, advertising, and so on. So this is part of the response that's on that program design handout. You'll see that there. So if this is a format that seems helpful to you, you've got that information provided on that handout to give you some guidance in answering that question 1. Now, question 2, you identify whether your school offers BPA or DECA associated with your business program. If you're not offering either one of those, you simply identify none of the above. This does not impact your approval status. You're not listing the leadership opportunities embedded within the program, like National Honor Society, other, FFA, FCCLA. You are saying, do we have a BPA or a DECA chapter that provides some additional leadership opportunities besides what you identified in question 1? And so by telling us you've got a BPA or a DECA chapter, we can infer what some of those kind of things are. But again, if you're not offering BPA or DECA, you don't need to identify anything else on there because they're not really aligned with your business program. You simply identify none of the above. Now for question 3 addresses career development. Explain what exploration and career field specific opportunities occur because students are enrolled in your business program. If the activity or development you are explaining is general and not specific to a business career pathway, then it probably should be considered a student leadership development, not career development. So if you're describing an activity and the preparation and things students are learning is because graphic designers do this work, or marketing experts do this kind of work, or accountants do this kind of work, that's a career development type of activity, and then you'd be describing that here in question 3. If it's those general things that we talked about earlier, communication skills, teamwork, those are leadership skills, you would identify those in question 1. So in career development, there's typically a range of career development activities that students should be experiencing through courses throughout your program. So we hope that through evolution from your middle school program to your early grades 9 and 10, and then later on in your grades 11 and 12, students proceed from career awareness to exploration, then preparation. We're hoping to see that at grade 12, they are not still doing career exploration, and they are instead to begin developing some specific career pathway skills, preparing them for going into the workforce or preparing for further post-secondary study or training. So hopefully that you are expressing as part of this answer the progression moving from awareness to exploration to preparation through the various courses in your program. The last question, question 4, addresses safety training. While this may look different than students taking a construction class, it's still a program approval requirement. So you're looking at more than just covering some health and safety laws. You're looking at more than just covering the school rules. You're looking at safety instruction students need to work and learn in the spaces where your classes take place. So what are the safety sorts of things that students need to know when they're working in the classroom, computer lab, and if you're operating a school store? So you see some of the things on the screen here, including protecting personal information and passwords, ergonomics, equipment safety, computer lab safety with tools, but also sanitation protocols, and then a variety of health and safety training, sanitation, food handling if you're operating a school store. So again, safety training is a required element, though it looks different than the teacher who's working in a woods lab. It is still required. You can't answer not applicable because it's a required element in Minnesota rule for having an approved program. Now, we come to the courses for which you are seeking approval, and lots of work may be needed on some of these course syllabi. For some districts, if you've not done any amendments, any updating of teachers or courses in the last few years, the syllabi that we have on file may be 5 years old. And the expectations of what was approved 5 years ago and what are being done today have evolved quite a bit. And so you are very unlikely that you're going to be able to use the same syllabi as 5 years ago for a current program approval. Our past experience is that it's difficult for an administrator to be completing and submitting syllabi for you that's going to show us the content, the outline, the indicator alignment that we're going to need to see. So we hope that your local district has a team that includes teacher or teachers from the business program area and perhaps an administrator that's assigned to oversee it as well. But this area of syllabus development is really difficult for anyone but the classroom teacher to prepare and deliver adequate evidence. And again, there's depending on the number of courses and the number of teachers in your program, this kind of work is what takes likely the longest in the entire program approval process. So we really encourage you to think about starting early. If you wait until September, even early October, because you've heard there's a November 1 deadline, you're going to have a lot of work that you're going to leave for yourself in a busy start to a new school year. And so it's very highly recommended that you begin this work yet this spring. One other reminder is whatever you are naming your courses as you enter information on tab 4, it would be highly helpful for us reviewing your syllabi that you use the same names on the files for those syllabi as you are entering for the names of courses on tab 4. So on that notes for renewal tab that I mentioned, and I'm going to put up an example that I've got of that now, just so because we've referred to that a time or two, so you can have a little bit of an idea what that looks like when you open that up. This is the application form you'll use. The tabs 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are the information you'll fill in or review and confirm or update. This tab on the far right, Notes for Renewal, has specific notes after reviewing your most recent program approval. There are notes and reminders about what to do on tab 1, 2, 3, reminders potentially if there are license issues. Tab 4, things that may have changed on the form, and things that upon your last approval, there may have been courses that were approved previously, but now there are issues related to frameworks, there are issues related to other things that may point out changes you'll need to make if those courses are going to be approved again. And then, as we mentioned earlier, if you have a work-based learning program you're looking to approve as well, a reminder of what those additional elements are. And then reminders about, as we talked about in part 1 of this series, some of the requirements for an advisory committee. So if the previous advisory committee did not meet current standards, then there's likely a note there that you've got some work to do on further developing your advisory committee. So we wanted to point out that tab to you. That's the tab that we're referring to in the slides here when we talk about that Notes for Renewal tab. So if anything on that tab highlighted courses that may have some problems or additional work to do, this is the process that we would encourage you to undertake to see whether those courses can be updated successfully so they can continue to be approved. Go to the Minnesota Business Framework for that course area. So we've got on our business webpage, at the bottom of the page is where you'll find the frameworks. Those are our standards, and you find frameworks for each area as it aligns to Table C. Table C has a set of courses under accounting and finance. Here's the frameworks for those courses. There are a list of courses on Table C related to hospitality and tourism. This is the frameworks document for that set of courses. So this slide is saying, go to the framework that relates to the course you are trying to update. Determine whether the alignment issue still exists. Maybe you have already updated that over the last 2-3 years and MD just didn't have a copy of your updated syllabus. So determine whether the issue still does exist. Make sure that you're also looking to teacher licensure. So while you're updating this, this is an appropriate time. The teacher or teachers that are teaching this course, do they have the appropriate license? Then review if this course can't be aligned to the existing course the way you had it before. Review other frameworks and or work with me to see if we can identify a better fit, a better course that where the alignment does exist that we can improve the course under. If you do find a better fit, then on that tab 4, the pre-populated tab 4 that I sent out to you for that has your current program approval information, you're just going to update the course name if it has changed. You're going to update the course code number if we found a better alignment, and then you can proceed towards having that application completed and sending to us. So the pre-populated information you are reviewing to make sure it is still current, or are there edits that are needed? And so here you see another slide reminding you just of those steps. On tab 4, if there are courses listed that are no longer being taught by your district and no longer being included in the registration guide. So if the school district has said you can still offer this course if you get students signed up, you may choose to leave it in there, but we encourage you to think about the fact that if it hasn't been offered for a while, the extra work of having to develop syllabi for a course you haven't taught in a while, you may want to choose to save your time in terms of developing your application and only update those materials later if and when you get future enrollments and you offer that course. There is an amendment process. You can add courses back at any time over the next 4 to 5 years. So an encouragement, something to think about, that if there are courses you have not offered for a while, even though the district will allow you to offer them, maybe this is the opportunity to not have to review review those materials, not include them, and you simply add them back to the program later if there is later enrollment where you're going to offer those courses. So look at tab 4, make sure the teaching assignments are still correct, the proper teachers are listed for teaching the various courses. Update any course names if you're still offering a course, but you've changed it. We want tab 4 to reflect the names of the courses as they appear in your student registration guide. So what we show on table C is a suggested or maybe a recommended title, but you should be listing the course titles as they appear in your registration guide. Now, an important note, column J has changed on this tab. So again, here's another example of not trying to copy paste everything from your old form. Use this new form, this FY24 update that I've given you. If you're copying from an old form, you're going to find information in column J that no longer aligns to what we are seeking to have you tell us about in column J. And so that would be an important one, especially to make sure that you are not just copy pasting from old documents. Now, another document that I sent you that can help if I've identified on the Notes for Renewal tab that there is some updating that you might need to do, or you've got a brand new course that you're hoping to develop for approval. That document was called How to Use Frameworks in Table C. And in that email that I would sent to one or more lead teachers, you should have gotten the document that looks like this: How to Use Business Frameworks in Table C. And it walks you through the steps that are summarized on this slide and the next one. Going through identifying on table C the appropriate course codes, taking a look at the course descriptions and making sure that it seems to model the kind of learning that you intend to happen in that course. And then as we go to the next slide, there's a key piece here that we want to point out: using the frameworks to identify the indicators and benchmarks, what you're going to have students learn in that course. Program approval is not about us evaluating the content per se of your course. It is evaluating the technical skill development, the outcomes that students come out of. So we're not looking for identify and understand. We're looking for develop, create. Okay, so those upper level thinking sorts of things. Those are the indicators and benchmarks you'll find in the frameworks. Those are the things that we're looking for, whatever content you choose to teach, that you're getting toward those outcomes. And as you look at our frameworks documents, what we're looking for is you to show us an approximate alignment of about 75 to 80% of the performance indicators that we've identified in the framework will be accomplished in your course. So this will be an opportunity for us to take a quick look at a framework for any of you that have not spent a lot of time using those frameworks. As we open up a frameworks document, the first several pages talk about that entity we talked about a little bit earlier, employability skills. The first 8 strands are things that we highly encourage you to embed throughout your program. Here you see critical thinking, problem solving. These are what make it a good CTE course, but not what make it an approvable business course. So hopefully you're seeing a range of options here in terms of employability skills that you'll embed, and hopefully different ones in different courses through your program. But you don't necessarily need to be listing any of these on your syllabus. After we get through those first 8 strands, then, and this happens to be the information technology framework, so we're going to see technology courses here. And so what you see is the program or course codes as they would match up on table C. And after we see some course description, we see possible certification or credential opportunities for that course. You see a possible outcome, an outline for how you might put the course together. And then you see the indicators and the benchmarks. In this course, there happen to be, as we scroll to the bottom, 7 indicators in this left-hand column, and then potential benchmarks that you might use to try and measure those indicators. Well, using what we talked about in the slide a few moments ago, 75 to 80%, we are likely looking at you presenting a syllabus that says you are going to be able to demonstrate alignment to 5, 6, or 7 of those indicators. If you've got a course that you're only doing 2 or 3 of them, we are probably having a conversation. We're looking at some additional course development to try and raise that level of alignment. So we're getting to that 75 or 80%. So all of the frameworks look the same way. If we look to an additional course, you see the program and course code, a description, possible certifications or credentials. You see the possible suggestions of how you might outline the course. And then again, you're seeing the indicators and the benchmarks. This course happens to have 5 indicators. So 75 to 80% looks like 4 or 5 of those. So if a teacher is presenting a syllabus to be approved for this course, we would expect to see that through the units of instruction you develop, you are aligned either 4 or 5 of those indicators. Now, this is a graphic that another teacher put together, and I just thought it described very well this sort of alignment concept. So you know who you are, and I told you I was going to use it, and thank you very much for being able to offer it to us. When we're talking about program development and MDE, program approval, what we're looking for is alignment that you've created instructional units that will accomplish performance indicators, that you've selected benchmarks that will help measure those indicators, and then you are using a variety of assessments, formative, summative, and authentic assessments that help us measure these performance indicators and benchmarks. And we're going to spend a few moments talking about that authentic assessment concept in just a moment. Now, we often get the question, what about aligning to national standards instead of to the state's frameworks? National standards in our area quite often try to control what is being taught, the content of what is being taught. And in Minnesota, that's a local control issue. We do not direct or approve the content or curriculum used. As I mentioned earlier, it is about the intended outcomes. So not what students are expected to know, but what they're able to do. So that sometimes creates a challenge if you are in a district that highly values or requires that you've got to show alignment to national standards instead of the outcomes that we're looking for that are usually represented in our CTE frameworks. So one of the documents that I sent in that email was a sample syllabus template. And that sample syllabus template attempts to identify some model areas where are either required areas or optional areas that you may choose to include in a syllabus. But what we want to look at in this particular example is when we get to page 3 and beyond. And we'll go back to the slide just a moment to show these things. One way you may show this alignment, this 75–80% alignment, especially if you are not in a district that is going to require showing alignment to national standards, is an outline alignment like this. Show us the units you've created, the instructional unit, show us the indicator and the benchmark that you've identified from the frameworks, and then briefly describe the authentic assessment project you have created that will help assess that students have met this performance indicator, have met this benchmark. So you see here that this particular class appears to have about 10 units and then a summative final. And so the names of the units, they identify the benchmarks they are attempting to achieve, and then the project that they have created, the authentic assessment project, and we're going to come to that term, for how they're going to assess that. Now, the next couple pages in this sample syllabus template are only useful if, again, your district is requiring or urging you to show alignment to national standards. If that's not your district, you would not need to follow these pages. You could tear them right off the example. But what you may choose to do is, if you've got some requirements for showing alignment to national standards, is show the name of your course, show the instructional units like you saw in the previous example. But now we're going to say this unit was guided by topics identified in the national standards. Students are attempting to achieve this indicator found in the Minnesota frameworks. And here is the benchmark, or are the benchmarks that students will be meeting in the performance of this performance indicator. And so then down at the bottom of this section, you describe this is the assessment project we will do at the end to show these topics have been covered and these indicators and benchmarks have been mastered by students. And so you see several different courses, several different examples how this may lay out. Again, this part of the example is only necessary and probably beneficial if your district is requiring or urging that you have to show alignment to national standards. If you do not, you probably will have a much easier time completing the syllabi, demonstrating the alignment, following this part of the example, this more curriculum mapping outline example. So again, the 2 slides here are simply saying that we've got 2 different examples embedded. This one can be more helpful if you are showing primary alignment to our frameworks. And if your school district wants to see demonstration of alignment to national standards as well, this is one example of how you might be able to show both, be able to show that alignment to national standards as well as alignment to our state frameworks, those outcomes that are what we're striving for in a CTE program. So as I mentioned, on that sample syllabus that identifies several key areas that we're looking for in syllabus or in evidence. Notice the title of this slide. We can't require that you put these things into your syllabus, but we need this information in some format. So I've developed a couple of different template models of other ways you could submit this information to us if you would choose not to, if you'd prefer not to, or if your district really has a strong preference that you don't include this information in a syllabus. So we're looking for a course description. We're looking for that alignment to indicators and benchmarks. We're looking for authentic assessments. I've talked about that. We're going to get to that in the next slide. And then those elements of program design, so student leadership, career exploration. And so whether you include those on your syllabus or another piece of evidence document, we are looking for those things as part of verifying the rigor and alignment of each of your courses. So between the example that I sent you, is that if that is helpful in terms of how you'll demonstrate that, you may include this information on the syllabus. You may also reach out to me and ask if I've got that other model template you would like to see, and potentially sharing some of that information in another format instead of on your course syllabus. All right, we've been talking about authentic assessments. Here we go, trying to lay that out. Minnesota Rule 3505 states that authentic assessment is what we should be using to measure student knowledge and skill proficiency. Authentic assessments are simulations to the extent possible of how professionals do their work in a career pathway. So if professionals don't make a diorama, if professionals don't make a poster, then those are probably not considered authentic assessments of making sure that students have met a performance indicator or a benchmark. So when we do simulation activities that simulate being the accountant, being the manager, being the graphic design person, we develop projects that are like what a graphic designer would develop for a client. Okay, when those are the authentic assessment projects, when those are the projects that we're grading, those are good authentic assessments. We are looking for, as I mentioned a few slides ago, more than just what students will know. Obviously, they need to come away from each of your units with certain knowledge, and that's what you're assessing within your course. But for our CTE outcomes, we are looking for them more to just be able to understand or identify or define. We want those higher level thinking skills. We want to see that they are able to apply, to create, to demonstrate, okay, at those application and synthesis levels, analysis levels, things like that. So higher levels. So look for that as you are identifying grading statements or outcome statements in your syllabus, and look for that as you're creating that outline. That have you developed projects that ask students to perform, to the extent possible, the kind of work that is being done in that hospitality career pathway, in that marketing career pathway. That's what you should be looking for and evaluating how we're going to potentially look at what you're submitting. Is that an authentic assessment of that indicator and of that benchmark? So some reminders as we close in on completing this short training video. Some key reminders for limiting your stress and for increasing your success. Use that FY24 update file. Do not go to our website and download a blank form. I have populated several of the tabs for you with your current information. If some of it hasn't changed, all you're doing is confirming, and then it's good to go. So you don't have to enter everything in brand new again. It also contains that Notes for Renewal tab, tips that I have looked at when I've reviewed your program over the past year or two that may pose some challenges in this round of approval. So I'm trying to give you those red flags, those heads up before you start any of your work. So I strongly encourage you to use that file as you begin developing your application. Use the program approval A to Z document, the how to use frameworks documents, to develop and revise your syllabi. Okay, the A to Z document is a tab by tab set of instructions, and hopefully this training video has been of some assistance to you. You may come back and choose to watch portions of it again, or you may choose to go from those written instructions, and that spells out with more detail what we're looking for as you complete each of those tabs. So please strongly consider utilizing those two resources that were developed to help you through this process. Now, I want you to understand this is not like other grant applications that you may have done in the past. This is, you are applying to make sure that you are eligible for state funding and potentially for federal Perkins funding as well. Most grant applications you turn in and they tell you got the money or you didn't. You're not going back with an opportunity to revise. Program approval has built into it that if we have some questions, we direct you some things that need revision, you will have opportunities to do that. In fact, in my experience over the last several years, probably 4 of 5 applications go back to the teacher with some revisions we are asking for. Sometimes it's revisions on the form. Oftentimes it's additional revisions on syllabi to demonstrate stronger alignment to course frameworks, to indicators and benchmarks. So if 4 out of 5 will need some additional work after they're submitted, that hopefully emphasizes the nature of why you want to start now. Because when you believe you've got all the application materials ready and turn them in, 4 out of 5 are probably going to see an email or a phone call from me with asking for some clarifications or asking for some additional information to be done before that application can be approved. So a couple of important timeline reminders. We cannot begin receiving and start processing your forms before June 1st. So if you take to heart starting early and you really start early and you believe you're done in May, you cannot submit to us and we can't begin processing any sooner than June 1st. That is when the window opens. Now, if you are a district that might be going through a change, you might have teacher changes, either losses or additions. Maybe you're losing or changing a principal or a superintendent. So if there are key leadership changes or teacher program changes, you may want to consider getting as much ready as you can this spring, this summer, but potentially waiting until fall when all of those pieces are finalized before you finalize your documentation and then send to us. You don't want to send things in saying, here are the courses or here are the teachers, and then second week in September, you need to contact us after we're almost done with approval and say, we've changed these courses, we've dropped these courses, we've added these courses, we've added these teachers. So if you may be going through some transition in the teaching staff, the courses, or your leadership, I encourage you to get as much ready as you can. Don't wait and don't do nothing until those things happen, but get as much ready as you can. And then as those changes settle in during workshop week in the early part of the fall, then finish your documentation and turn those into us. Now, November 1st is the final date for submitting your application documents, at least your original submission. So again, as we work with those applications, if there's further clarifications we need, you will hear from me or you'll hear from MD in another format for additional information that we need back. But we need to have received at least your initial set of application materials no later than November 1st. Now, you should be sending one email with all of the information, all the materials related to a specific application. So if you've got just the 140710, the business program, you would be sending one email with that FY24 update file completed, and then a syllabus or other evidence documents for each of the courses you've listed on tab 4. Those should all be attached documents. And you see the email address on the screen. It's on the directions tab in the FY24 update. It's in our instructions that we send out. Do not send these directly to me. Now, I can review drafts during the summer. If you are putting some materials together and would like me to review draft materials and give you feedback, I'm happy to do that. But as you are submitting your formal, official application for program approval renewal, it needs to go through that address you see there. Do not send those materials directly through me. Now, no matter what you are using within your district for our state agency to process your forms, the application form, that FY24 form, has to be in MS Excel format. You can't have converted it to PDF. You can't have converted it to a Google Sheet. It won't be accepted. We can't process it. Similarly, your syllabi. We can receive syllabi in either MS Word or PDF format. We can't accept Google documents. We can't accept links to documents you've put in your Google Drive. We can't accept zipped files. If your submission includes any of those things, the email will go back to you and say, please resubmit. We can't access, we can't open, so we can't process your materials. So no Google Docs, no Google Sheets, no Google Drive links. You're sending the application form as an Excel form, and you're sending syllabi as either PDF or Microsoft Word formatted documents. And in case I haven't mentioned it, you should think about starting now. I've attempted to provide information, tips, and in some cases, templates to make the renewal application process easier, but it will still take time. For most cases, no matter how many teachers you have, no how many courses you've got, this is not work that many of you have done for 3 to 5 years. Some of you have been doing some updates, you've been doing some amendments, but for most of you, this has not been on your radar. This has not been work you've been doing for 1 or several years, and so it will take a little time. And so the question that I encourage teachers and administrators to think about as you look at from the date you're watching this video, looking ahead to the number of weeks coming ahead, do you still want to be doing this work in fall workshop week? Do you still want to be doing this work as you approach MEA break? Do you still want to have this work that's hanging over you and having to complete at Thanksgiving break or winter break? Almost every year at this part of the training, we remind people of that, and then we get to those breaks and there are people that are still not completed with their applications. And so that is all of the other important work you've got to do in your school on a day-to-day basis. The longer this work goes uncompleted and unapproved, you've got this hanging over you and the eligibility implications of not having it approved, so funding not be available until you can complete this process. So again, strongly encourage you to use your time well this spring and possibly this summer so that you are not extending this work out into the important work you've got to do as you start a new school year. Now, once your approval is completed, this approval is good for 5 years, including the school year that's about to start. So it will be good for 5 years through June 30th of 2029. If in the course of the next 4 years beyond that, you change teachers, you add or change courses, we have a program approval revision amendment form posted on our website. That's what you fill in to tell us about teacher changes, course changes. So you submit that anytime in those 4 years when there are key changes to your program. Now, the last thing we'll talk about here for just a couple of slides has to do with program approval as part of a 5-year cycle, a 5-year process. Program approval was never intended to be you do something 1 year and then the next 4 years you don't do anything. That is how the work piles up and the process becomes very time consuming and quite frankly, very stressful to have to do it all in 1 year. The requirement in legislation talks about there should be continuous improvement during and after as part of this program approval cycle. And so I've developed a model that I'm using with some consortia, and it does not require formal participation from me. There's nothing magic about it, but key concepts, key ideas for how you can strategically be looking at program improvements over the course of 4 to 5 years. So that as you see in this example, right up here in blue is where teachers in these school districts were doing program approval. They carry out these various sets of work staggered throughout a 4-year time period so that by the time they get down to program approval renewal 5 years from now, they have accomplished all of these various things to potentially make their program stronger, better aligned to workforce needs, and hopefully then making this program approval renewal process much easier to complete. So continuous improvement, we're looking at some things. We're looking at how you've developed your program of study, alignment with post-secondaries in your area. Remember, the word program, the term program of study is often misused. You do not have a secondary program of study. You have a secondary approved program. A program of study by state law definition and by Perkins 5 definition is the alignment of a secondary program and a post-secondary program. So how is what students are doing in your approved program aligning to and preparing them for the next steps they may take if they go further into post-secondary education? There's a great document called the State Recognized Program of Study User Guide. You see the link to it here. That can help you work with your other CTE teachers, work with if you're doing PLCs in your school, or work with your advisory committee on what kind of work should be done. Looking at the rigor and alignment of your programs to workforce needs. That's part of that concept I mentioned earlier, this comprehensive local needs assessment. Your region, your consortia should have been identifying what are the key needs in different program areas. Is the program that we're offering right now preparing students for the jobs that will be available for them in the future? There's a great document that I also sent out in that email called Data Analysis, Real-Time Talent Data on Business Career Pathways. It shows some projections for the coming years. What are career fields and career pathway areas that are projected to continue growing? And so you can look at that data and evaluate your current program to see, are we preparing students for those jobs that are projected to be available in their future instead of in our past. The ultimate goal is to make sure that your program is stronger, better aligned in 5 years. It shouldn't look the same 5 years from now as the program you are submitting for application for approval during this round of renewal. So keep that in mind as we're looking at the various mapping of activities over the course of a 4 or 5 year continuous improvement cycle. Finally, the email that I sent you should have also included the information about various training sessions I've set up this spring and this summer. So once you've reviewed this video, hopefully you get a chance to begin working on some of your materials. And if you have questions, if you're having problems, you can log in for any of these sessions. And so there will not be a formal agenda. It will be driven by the questions that you have and trying to work through looking at examples. And if there are other teachers on the line, they may also share information on how they dealt with if they had that similar question as well. So you should have received links for those training opportunities in the email from me. If you did not receive them, let me know and I will send those to you again. So in conclusion, thank you for joining me today. Please reach out if you need copies of any of the materials that I have referenced in this presentation, or if you need help on any of the questions you have related to the program approval renewal process. I hope that the resources we've provided here will ease to the extent possible the nature and the time frame that it will take to complete your renewal. Let me know whatever information, whatever help I can provide to assist you as you're completing this work. Thanks very much. Have a great day.